Hello to you all and welcome to another installment of the Pitcast by us here at the Pit Crew Online, from the fans for the fans. On this episode, we are talking about the Indy 500. I'm your host, Adam, and I am the resident IndyCar correspondent and a fellow contributor at the Pit Crew Online. And joining us today is three special guests who are all fellow contributors here at the Pit Crew Online. I'm just going to get them to say a little bit about themselves, just to introduce themselves. So starting off, we are joined by Luca.
Hello, everyone. I'm a regular here on the Pitcast, and I'm probably most known for writing opinion pieces. And as my legendary social media profile's bio would say, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but it just so happens that I'm always right.
Fantastic, thank you, Luca. And now we move on to Chris. Say hi, Chris.
I don't know. I'm Chris. I'm generally just the stats man, so always a fond fan of a stat, and throw out the polls on the account as well. So if you like to raise your opinion across moves and overtakes and want a stat, then I'm the man to come to.
Brilliant, thank you, Chris. And last but not least, we move to Ashleigh. Hi, Ashleigh.
Hi, you're right. I'm Ashleigh. I have contributed a couple of times to the Pit Crew. I've done a few opinion pieces like Luca. But at the moment, I'm just doing a couple of podcasts. But yeah, I've been around for a little bit, so you've probably seen a few Red Bull related posts. But yeah, that's what I do.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ashleigh. So as I said, we're here to talk about the Indy 500 that just happened last Sunday. It was an interesting race. It was certainly a memorable one without the fans for one of the first times in the Indy 500's history. And we'll just recap very shortly about the outcome of the race. The race was won by Japanese favorite two-time Indy 500 winner, Takuma Sato. He held off Scott Dixon for the majority of the last portion of the race. And, personally for me, it was a magnificent performance by Sato. It was unreal, frankly, to see him pull that gap ahead of Scott Dixon to finally take that second Indy 500 win. And I'm just going to ask, really, everyone's thoughts on the race. Did you have any general thoughts?
I don't know who wants to go first, but I was sort of, I don't know. I mean, it was a good race. I didn't really notice the fans not being there. I think that's probably because we've gotten used to it with Formula One. It was still as much of a spectacle, maybe not as much as normal because the fans aren't there, and I wasn't mad at that, to be honest. But the race itself, I mean, restarts breed restarts, so I had that. But I don't know. I sort of felt Dixon had it. It was a little bit maybe robbed, just maybe. But he worked hard. Sato worked hard, and yeah, overall it was a good race. I enjoyed watching it.
Great.
I'd like to go next. So for the past 3 years in the Indy 500, ever since the current era of cars adopted a much thinner aero kit, which has worked wonders on road courses, but on super speedways, I think it's no coincidence the fact that the last 3 years, the winner of the 500 has come from the front row. He had no power finish. I think he was started second in 2018. Simon Pagenaud was on pole last year, and now Takuma Sato, he started third. Which I'm not saying that it's impossible to overtake with this aero kit on a super speedway, because it's clearly not. I mean, I think it was 2018 when Rossi did some audacious manoeuvres around the outside and all these corners. Overall, I'm very happy with how the race went. I think Sato at points was a bit over the line with his defensive manoeuvres, but I'm very happy for him. It's amazing to think that ever since, I think it was every year since like 2010 or something like that, we've had a completely different winner, and now Sato's it's broken that duct.
Brilliant. And Chris?
Well, it was a good battle up top. He was never away from it. He was always around the top five for Sato. Dixon got a bit unlucky with the cautions from time to time. It was about caution free when, but we'll get into that in a bit about when it was involved. He had about a 10-second gap up top. he broke the toe, and then they done a bit of a yo-yo battle, and when caution came out at the end, you thought, oh, three lap sprint at the end, it might come down to that, and then it just ended under the caution, which was a bit of a shame because you thought could have had a bit of a ding-dong battle at the end, but he was already drinking the milk come lap 196 because it was game over by then. But it was a good battle. I mean, saw it on social media as well when I was doing the live tweets. Some people seen it for the first time because there wasn't much going on. That it was a first time watch for most people, and they were thoroughly enjoying it. So it could be a case, and you've got a Gateway double header this coming weekend as well. I think Sato's first oval win was at Gateway, so he's looking forward to it. Hopefully, you might spur him on for the title.
Well, thanks, guys. Well, let's quickly talk about, because we've just raised a good point there, which is Sato's defensive move on Dixon just after the restart. Obviously, Sato flew by Dixon, and he pulled off a bit of an audacious defense, one could say, on the inside. Some might liken it potentially to Grosjean's defense of Sainz or Ricciardo at Silverstone, which some people thought was a little bit hairy at the time.
The difference with that is Grosjean can't pull things like that off.
I mean, yeah, we're comparing the subtleties of Grosjean and Sato. I'm not sure who would come out on top, possibly Sato, but I thought that his move was fair. It was a fair defense, and Dixon was nowhere near alongside Sato going into the corner, and some people thought that it was a bit on the edge. Personally, I thought it was a great defense, and it allowed him to just he pretty much had the race controlled after that point. What did everyone else think of that move?
That won him the race, didn't it? Really, I think if he hadn't have moved then, I think it was fair. I mean, personally, I kind of thought Dixon had it in the bag, to be honest. I was a bit gutted when it happened, but it's just a bit of racing at the end of the day, and you've got to make bold moves to win the Indy. So I think had some other drivers already complained about Sato's doing that previously. I'm not too sure. I probably need to look into that. But...
It was Rossi.
Ah, right. Oh, right. Okay. He pulled off some good moves as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just racing, isn't it? Like, you've got to be bold to win it, and he was. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
The thing about Rossi, he was a bit too bold, and he ended up in the wall. So.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You got a red rage from the pit lane troubles. But.
Yeah, Luca, did you have anything to add?
I do want to make a point about Marco Andretti, because Andretti, obviously having that famous surname has helped him a lot in his racing career. I never watched IndyCar for like when Andretti came into the sport, but I am aware that he was apparently very good in his first year, and he's just tailed off since then. And I kind of criticised him being there because his team owner, other than his dad, is Brian Herter, who also has a son in IndyCar who is actually pretty good, Colton Herter. And I said for a long time now, if you're going to have nepotism, at least have it justified by ability. And I kind of wrote that on Twitter, and Marco Andretti blocked me because of it.
Oh my goodness.
So,
strong.
I bear that in mind. I have to acknowledge the fact it's no mean feat to get pole position at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Indy 500. So I do doff my cap to him. He did go backwards in the race, though. So maybe I was right in the end. But he fell back so quickly. Like he was immediately passed by Dixon, who I thought like Ashleigh was going to romp away to an easy win, like he has done for many of the races this year. And then Sato came along and ruined that party. And Andretti, where did he finish in the end? I think he wasn't even in the top 10.
I'm not sure if he was even in the top 10 come checkered flag.
There you go then.
Yeah.
So, nevertheless, I've given him a load of shtick, and he has blocked me for it. But I still think that it's worth noting that he's obviously done something that not a lot of drivers can claim that they've done. which has put it on pole for the Indy 500. Other than that, there were a lot of things that happened in the race. One thing happened particularly with a driver who I really don't like, but I'll save that for later. And just phenomenal racing across the whole field, and this is why I love the Indy 500, because it's one of those races that you can, it really does pick its winner. It isn't predetermined.
That's right. I mean, it sort of evokes that sort of old racing of just going for the overtake no matter what, and really risking it as well. We saw 5 cars sometimes going side by side, and it was just stunning. And we've touched on Rossi's overtakes on some of the restarts, and we'll get on to that. Can anyone hear some feedback? Is that me? I'm hearing a little bit of echo from my computer, but no one else can hear that. That's good. We'll move swiftly on. We touched a little bit about the end of the race, the cautions, precautions, and of course we had that horrific accident at the end of the race, which gifted Sato the race. Whether he was gifted or not, we'll never know. But Spencer Pigot brought out the final caution of the race by going sideways into the attenuator onto the pit entrance, which was a really bad crash to see. I never like to see a car going sideways into anything, really. It just sends a shiver down my spine. And luckily, Spencer Pigot was unhurt, relatively speaking. He got out of the car and he had his medical checks and he was okay. But it did bring out the last caution, and some people did think that maybe they were going to get a red flag and get a last-minute shootout to the end of the race, and some people questioned IndyCar's decision to bring out the yellow in the first place. What did people think? Did people think that the yellow flag, the caution, was the sensible option, or would people have preferred to see a red flag shootout to the end?
I think for entertainment's sake, the red flag would have been good. I'm not really sure whether I don't know if it would have been the right thing, to be honest. It would have just made it more interesting, really, to be honest. Because it, as Chris said, Sato was drinking the milk. Like by the time once he'd overtaken, that was it. So to give some other guys the opportunity and to bunch the group up together again, that would have been really interesting. Whether it would have been the safest thing to do, I don't know. But I mean, they decided what they decided, and we have to make peace with that. But if they were going to do it again, they should have red flagged it 100%.
I mean, NASCAR is sort of famous for always bringing out the red flag in order for the shootout to happen at the end. And I think the official statement from IndyCar was that the barrier would have taken too long to repair, and also that potentially there wouldn't have been enough laps for a potential shootout at the end. I think it was brought out on 4 or 5 laps to the end, so maybe a couple of rotations around under a safety car, maybe 2 laps maximum under red flag. So whether or not we would have got enough racing, we'll never know, sadly. Chris, did you have any thoughts on whether the red flag or the yellow or the caution was the right thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but then you just get the other races in the States where you get sometimes it sounds like the commentators go into absolute meltdown and they just start shouting overtime and like absolutely going mad and
doing a David Valsecchi on us or something.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't think of the actual commentator's name, but then I thought the first person you think who got absolutely jumping up in the air is Valsecchi because of his attitude in Formula 2 and stuff like that. But he won the race, and well, Letterman, I bet he was jumping up in joy because he got a 1-3, and he got the perfect photo as well with of Scott Dixon sort of just going, only me. Led what's it? I think it was 111 laps, something like that. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
better luck next time. And he's just in the right position for taking the overall series. So, and there's always another IndyCar next year, and he'll just look forward to hopefully seeing it with an actual fan base there.
Yeah. Luca, you have a point?
Yes. As well as the Indy 500 over the weekend, there was also MotoGP action, and there was a red flag period in that.
Right.
And I felt really sorry for one of the riders. He was leading. He'd done absolutely everything right, and then the red flag came out and he went tumbling down. And so, whilst I do get the entertainment factor, the fact was at that point, if they had red flagged it, because I think IndyCar, most ovals, it is a case of, be in position for every single lap to just win at the end. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, but I do fear for a lot of the drivers who at that point had done nothing wrong, and then the restart happens and then it all goes to shit. So that's my point about IndyCar with the ovals. I'm glad. I think the right person won it in the end, ultimately, because I think if they'd have been a restart and then like a red flag and a restart, and then it would all go wrong, and they would have had no chance to really come back from it. So I think having maybe like a period of if there's like a caution within the last few laps, like with like 5 or less laps to go, then it should finish under caution, because it is just going to get. I was actually watching a sim racing championship event, and they did an IndyCar race at Indianapolis, and it was much less laps. It wasn't the actual Indy 500, but it may as well have been, because it took so long because everyone kept crashing. And it's just like, when will this be over? I want to go to sleep. And I just didn't want that again, especially because they could actually get hurt in real life Indy.
Yeah. I think also, I think there was also some discrepancies with maybe NBC's airtime, and maybe if the red flag had gone out, maybe NBC wouldn't have been able to keep continuing showing the race beyond a certain point. So potentially there might have been some issues with the TV coverage. But yeah, no, I think you're right. And
there's also the fact that, they actually love caution periods. So, we can now show advertisements. Yay! Consumerism!
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's
obscene. The adverts over in the States is obscene. Like they kicked the ball in Super Bowl. Right, let's go to Pepsi. Like
this is what I say about American sport. It's not actual sport. It's a group of advertisements with bits of sport played in between.
I mean, it seems like we're spoilt really in England for not getting advertisements, and it never used to be like that. I think when it used to be ITV back in the day, we used to get loads of advertisements throughout the race, but only recently we've been blessed with this with a no ad Sky Sports F1 coverage, and it's long may it continue. Luckily, we got the blessing of having Jack Nicholls and who I can't remember who.
It was Alex Jakes.
That's it, Alex Jakes.
Tom Gaymore.
Yeah.
And Tom Gaymore.
Do we know who?
What commentators are awful.
Tom Gaymore does. Does he do?
He does various. He does various. I'm quite friendly with him. He's been helping me with something. He does miscellaneous commentating here and there. When IndyCar was on BT Sport, it was him and Keith Collentine of RaceFans.net who did the commentating. And I'm so glad we have that. We don't. It only seems to be for the Indy 500, because last year it was, I think, Alex Jakes and Alex Brundle, I think.
Right.
I might be wrong there, but
no, I remember that.
I hope from this point on, we do have some kind of commentary with the because it's absurd the amount of times they go. You just get back from a break. We're going to be going to a break very soon.
And then you just have this like absurd period where you don't have any graphic on the left telling you the standing. You don't have anything. It's just it really is sort of a bit of a no man's land. And if you're a new fan coming into watching the Indy 500 for the first time, it must be a real struggle to really get on board with what you're watching, really. So yeah, I think it was great that we had the British commentary on board. So thanks, guys. Moving swiftly on, we're going to talk a little bit about Alexander Rossi. Now, I don't know about you guys, but Alexander Rossi, for me, could have won this race. He was in the general sort of vicinity of Sato and Dixon for most of the race. And in fact, I think it was after the second load of pit stops, or I might be wrong. It could be the third, but it was Dixon and Rossi who were basically trading positions at the front, trying to extend the gap to the rest of the field, and in doing so, maybe even save fuel. And at one point, it could have been a Rossi, Sato, Dixon shootout up until the dreaded pit stop, where the slow right rear brought him out into the path of Sato. And we all know what happened there. He got a penalty that took him right to the back of the grid. And we got to see some magnificent overtakes from Rossi until he unfortunately then met his demise in the wall. But not without entertaining us with a few overtakes going 3 wide through some corners. It was absolutely stunning. But I mean, for Rossi, for what was a magnificent drive, such a shame. And I think something happened to him similar last year. I think he got a penalty potentially in last year's Indy 500, which I don't know if I can't remember the grounds of it. If anyone remembers that, Luca, do you remember what happened to him?
Yes, so he did get a penalty, but he got some slow stops. The refueling hose wasn't clear, and so you could tell he was mad. I remember, I think he was gesticulating at Oriol Servia, but like moving too late. Like, what are you doing? And so when that's the best kind of Rossi. I think Rossi has a minor chip on his shoulder, not that in a petulant sense, but rather the fact that, well, we know that he won in that incredible fuel-saving manner in 2016, winning in his first race, becoming the first American rookie to win it since like 1928.
Yeah.
But then ever since then, Rossi, I think he's always been wanting to win a 500 on, like an Indy 500 on pure pace. And he came very close to that last year, but ultimately he lost out to Simon Pagenaud. I do want to take a note on that penalty, though, whilst I do have the floor. That was the team's fault, okay? And we've all, F1 fans, IndyCar fans, everyone, when the driver gets punished for a mistake by his team, we accept it, but we all know it's BS, right? However, I would like to point out, I said earlier, there's a driver I don't like, and it's not Pagenaud, even though I do like him. I don't like him. He's not the driver I'm referring to. Ferrucci. Rossi came out of the pits and collided with Sato, right? Penalty. Ferrucci, for whatever reason, he and Colton Herta are side by side, and they leave the pits, and Ferrucci turns way more than usual. Colton Herta has to drop back, and he goes over the radio, call him a C-word bag, which I saw on Twitter. It wasn't on the live broadcast for understandable reasons. I think there's something wrong with the IndyCar commentary and the IndyCar stewards, because that wasn't investigated, and Ferrucci was excused. If we remember back to when the iRacing challenge was on, Ferrucci did that thing with Oliver Askew over the line.
Oh no!
And it was ultimately, ruined Askew's winning chance. And immediately, in the commentary, they were starting to make excuses for him. And Ferrucci even said, I was trying to grab his slipstream, when you could then go and find a Twitch clip of him literally actually turning across on purpose. It's like, last lap, Oliver, you all have some fun. It's only a game. And then Paul Tracy goes on Twitter with his tinfoil hat, and he's all like, obviously Ferrucci's steer was hacked into. He listed Alex Jones vibes, and I could go on about that all day. I don't.
If you can do the podcast with that American accent from now on,
yes,
that would be brilliant, because that's very funny. Nice one, Luca.
The Ferrucci one.
Yeah,
just any American accent. It was very funny.
We're going for sort of Southern American Texan oil tycoon sort of accent, if that's all right.
Yeah, loved it.
We're that low and getting good. I don't think I'll do that all the way, but I hope I've demonstrated my point about the hypocrisy of the Rossi penalty. If it's the team's fault, you want to punish the driver, fair enough. But if you don't punish the driver for turning across on someone in a dangerous situation like that, my blood's boiling. I'm going to calm down.
That's
it's a wider issue of consistency, isn't it? It's not just like we see it in Formula One, but also, it's a wider thing of, they're being select. Well, we don't know that they're being selective. They might have missed it. You don't know. That's the thing. But I understand what you're saying completely. Yeah, it's Toto Wolff with the mask over his face kind of moment.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, did you have anything to add really on Rossi's performance or the penalty?
Not regarding that, but also the situation that they also missed the pits with one of his stops as well, and that cost time, but made up in the portion.
He didn't cross the white lines, so he had to abort. Yeah,
so had to abort that. So it was a bit of a miscommunication overall. He was one of the faster drivers on the day. He's got a good record at Indy. I think it's top 10 beside, and then obviously Top mate was 7th in 17, 4th or 5th in 18, and then 2nd last year, and then 28th, 27th, depending on when he binned it. But yeah, he got there, and then you got the road rage, and I think he's done 5 cars in one straight with the draft. And then, yeah, I think it was lap 144 in the wall. Just absolute. It was just a bit of a calamitous occasion with the team. So with Rossi, he had the speed, but unfortunately, it didn't really come to fruition. So he's just got to knuckle down, and maybe next year will be his second shine to do it actually on pace rather than on an alternate strategy.
Yeah. He almost seems like the nearly man in IndyCar right now. I mean, he came so near to the championship, to Dixon that one year, and since then he just seems to have, issue after issue, and you sort of wonder, when is it going to go right for Rossi? And I don't know if that's going to be anytime soon. It feels like there's so many young drivers now on the rise in IndyCar. Is Rossi going to get his chance now with the likes of O'Ward and Askew and Bilal and VK? Herta, yeah. Or even Ferrucci.
Hell no.
But we're gonna park there for 1 minute, and we're gonna move swiftly on to Arrow McLaren. Now, they had a bit of a mixed bag, McLaren, at the Indy 500. We'll say that, and we're gonna start with Fernando Alonso. Now, everyone's favourite Fernando. What was that? Sorry, Luca.
Oh yeah, he was in this race, wasn't he? I totally forgot.
I know you'd be remiss thinking he was, but he was in it somewhere near.
It was Dixon Slipstreamer.
Sorry, was that Chris?
It was Dixon Slipstreamer for half of it, wasn't he?
Exactly.
Was like...
and he, I can't remember. I think he finished maybe 21st overall.
Yes,
but I think Fernando Alonso was struggling. I think he struggled pretty much since the crash in practice. That really set him back. And I think he lost confidence with the car at that point. And throughout the race, he seemed to struggle with clutch issues and pit stop issues. And he just seemed to fall back. And I don't know about you guys, but it seemed like every 5 minutes he was pitting. And it seemed like whenever he was part of the first group of drivers to pit early. And it just seemed from that point on, he just kept on pitting. So he never made up places. He was just constantly near the back of the grid. So unfortunately for Fernando Alonso, the Triple Crown hunt continues. And we know he's not going to get another shot for the next 2 years because good old Cyril Abiteboul has put a stamped on those dreams, really. And looks like he's going to be waiting for another couple of years to try that. But I mean, we've seen Sato win it. How old's Sato? Is he 43? 2, 3, something like that. 43. So he's got some time. But what did everyone make of Fernando Alonso's attempt?
Oh, it was sad. It was really sad.
That just sums it up.
Well, Alonso, it wasn't as good as the first run, but it's not the first time Sato's done him in Northern America. He got done in the Super Aguri in Montreal, if everyone says correctly. And then Sato won it when Alonso competed last time.
Mm-hmm.
So he qualified, that is.
Well, he didn't compete in
exactly, yeah.
So what you're saying
I'm taking consideration when Alonso competed in the race.
So what you're saying is Takuma Sato wins 100% of Indy 500s whenever Fernando Alonso takes part.
Yeah. So if Sato's begging for him to come back in 3 years' time, and then Alonso, he begged for the caution to come out because he was going to go a lap down, but in the end he finished a lap down anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But he was just anonymous. I don't know why he was under the first caution he pitted, and then the second that was when there's a lot of fire. I don't know what that was all about in the race, but we'll go on to that in a bit. And then the second caution, he pitted again. You'd have thought he'd have been a part of the 5 that stayed out on the alternate strategy. Just to do something different to get up the field with the likes of Pagano that led for a bit and
well, it
Castro
just
never
makes you wonder if the fact that he was taking that many opportunities, clearly he was still trying to figure out the balance of the car as well, so trying to sort of get into the swing of it, and it just never really happened. It's a shame, because he was just literally a bum on the seat filling up the grid really at the end of it, wasn't he? And I wanted him to do well, just because, I don't know, it's Fernando Alonso, but then that's the same reason that, he's in Formula One again, because it's Fernando Alonso, I think I don't know, that's a whole other story really. I feel like he's going back into that off the back of his previous wins. He might not necessarily be the same again. I don't know. I'd like to see him win it. I'd like to see him get the Triple Crown.
Yeah. Just
because I think he's a nice enough guy. I don't know. Maybe other people have different opinions on that, but he just didn't really make any headway with it. Yet Pato O'Ward did really well. He came in.
I think it was O'Ward who said, "You're in our yard now. You're not going to win it," or something like that prior to the race.
Yeah.
He's his
I
teammate.
would like to add something about Alonso.
Go for
it. In all of Alonso's attempts to compete in the Indy 500, McLaren have partnered up with a pre-existing IndyCar team. 2017, he was with Andretti, and he could have actually won that race had his Honda engine not let him down, which is kind of the story of Fernando Alonso, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then for 2019, they went again partnering with Carlin, and two of Carlin's three proper cars didn't qualify, that being Max Chilton and Patricio O'Ward, and then also Alonso. He was beaten to it by Carl Kaiser. I can never remember the team name, but they were a very small team compared to McLaren. And so now for this year, McLaren have formed a full season team with Schmidt-Peterson, so it's Arrow McLaren SP. And Alonso hasn't seemed to really be flirting with the idea of doing a full IndyCar season. I know for a fact that I've heard mumbles of potentially McLaren having like a third car for a majority of these events, and the likes of Jenson Button and Jimmy Johnson have considered taking part. Button would take part in road course races, and Johnson would probably be more keen to do ovals. However, for Alonso to win the Triple Crown, and now the earliest he can do it is 2023, because obviously Renault are not allowing him to do it, I think he's going to have to break away from McLaren. I don't know if he's very hung up on the idea of being the second person, or if he just the second person to win the Triple Crown after Graham Hill, or if he just wants it anyway, because if he wants to be the second ever, he's going to have some competition, because Juan Pablo Montoya, now, I don't know if the Monaco Grand Prix and the F1 World Championship counts in the part of the Triple Crown, or if it's just the Monaco Grand Prix. But if we were just going for Monaco Grand Prix, Indy 500, and an overall win at Le Mans, Juan Pablo Montoya, considering the rule changes that might be coming to, or are coming to the WEC, and Penske flirting with the idea of competing at Le Mans in the top class, Montoya is probably within a closer shout of getting that than Alonso. However, in any case, I think Alonso, he really should consider going for a full season of IndyCar, maybe after his F1 stint with Renault ends, and if it isn't that successful, which knowing Alonso draws bad luck like a moth to a flame, doesn't he? With knowing his luck, Renault are probably going to be at the back of the field in 2022. Nonetheless, I would like to think he would perhaps go to do IndyCar full time, and even if he just did the Indy 500, he would have to definitely be with a team like Penske. Obviously, they're not going to have him at the likes of Ganassi or Andretti, because Honda will put a huge fat no on that. Yeah. And so maybe it is a case of Alonso's not going to win it unless he drops his ego, which when Ashleigh said he's a nice guy, I'm not saying he isn't, but he has been known to rub people the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
But we all know he's only doing that because he knows that he's very capable. He knows he can win, and he just does all he can to do that. So I think Alonso is very capable, and I hope he does well. As for the other two, I've always felt like O'Ward has been up there with the likes of Colton Herta, and because if you remember, he beat Colton Herta to the Indy Lights title, and then his successor to that was Oliver Askew, and obviously Indy Lights isn't going ahead this year, which is a shame. I was immediately just tipping Kyle Kirkwood to win that because he's like won everything in the rest in America up until that point. And it is definitely a good sign that McLaren they're going in the right direction in terms of their upwards trajectory of doing a full in-time IndyCar program. And who knows, Patricio Award was he nearly won, I think, was it Road America race 2?
It was Road America, but he also almost could have won Iowa race 2, really, until a really slow pit stop put him back. So he could have had 2 wins already. So he's done amazing.
Award, he is the real deal. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with him. McLaren have really got a good thing in him, and I'm glad that he's found his calling, because if you remember back in 2019, he had a successful first half of the year in IndyCar with Carlin. Then he got picked up by Red Bull, did a race in F2, replacing the ever-slow Mahavir Raghunathan, who was banned for that race. And then he spent the rest of the year in Super Formula, and I was like, oh no, is his career going to go to shit because of Helmut Marko being impulsive? And then McLaren signed him, so I'm happy about that. And Askew's brilliant as well. I really like him. So.
Yeah.
I feel like I waffled on a bit there. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. And speaking of Askew, he was doing okay. He at one point he was leading near the front until unfortunately he came into a really bad accident, didn't he? He had to avoid, I think it was Connor Daly who lost it going into turn 1, and Oliver Askew
turn 4.
Turn 4, sorry, and then Oliver Askew veering off to the left. He just lost the car and went straight into the inside wall, and that was the end of Oliver Askew's race, and which is unfortunate because we could have had potentially maybe 2 Arrow McLaren Schmidt-Petersons in the top 10. So that would have been a really good result for McLaren. But I think they'll be, as you said, they'll be positive about O'Ward's performance, and they'll dust themselves off. And I think they've got a good shot for the rest of the IndyCar season, given how their performance is going. But going back to your point about Alonso and what team he could join, I'm just looking at the list of Chevy listed teams here in the IndyCar season. All we've got really is Penske, Arrow, McLaren, Schmidt-Peterson. We've got AJ Foyt, who we know is it Tony Kanaan who's leaving, or is it someone else that I'm trying to remember who drives for AJ Foyt who might be leaving soon?
Charlie Kimball.
Charlie Kimball. There's another long-standing racer veteran.
Dalton Kellett.
Dalton Kellett's an Indy Lights driver who's just got a few rounds in IndyCar.
Okay. Well, there's AJ Foyt, there's Ed Carpenter Racing, and Carlins. There's not really a lot of opportunity there, I think.
Yeah, the only one there is Penske, and they are like stubborn with their current 3 drivers. I mean, if I was Roger Penske, I'd reevaluate whether I wanted to keep Pagenaud, because he's clearly got a bit of an ego on him. Again, calling back to that iRacing thing that he did to Lando Norris, which we won't go into because Penske definitely seemed like the only one to do it. But I know for a fact that they were planning on running Scott McLaughlin, the supercars driver.
Oh, yes.
One who's won that. He actually won that IndyCar 175 race on iRacing, and he was going to be in the IndyCar Grand Prix 2 weeks before the 500, and then obviously this whole rescheduling happened, and travel restrictions have prevented McLaughlin from really taking that chance. But I reckon if things go back to normal next year, and well, actually it wouldn't be next year because Alonso's at Renault, isn't he? But like in the next few years, maybe like Penske will have a change of heart with the amount of cars that they run, and then someone on a full-time basis, someone on part-time. Maybe that would be a good shout. Alonso sharing the same car with McLaughlin. Maybe Castroneves at that point will have called it a day.
I think Castroneves wants to keep racing.
Yeah, he's chasing one of the all-time most Indy 500 wins. I think, what is he chasing, his 4th or 5th or something like that. But I think,
Chris, you said something and I didn't hear.
Sorry.
I was saying, aren't Ferrari talking about entering Indy?
Well, Alonso wouldn't go to Ferrari, That's
a Ferrari hypothetically besides Renault.
Yeah, that's damage beyond.
I mean, was the Ferrari in IndyCar more a ploy in terms of trying to persuade the rest of the teams to give in to their demands for the Concord Agreement, and they would just leave and go to IndyCar and hang it in with F1, which we know is false. We know Ferrari will always stay in F1 and they will always be the villain team, and we sort of have a love-hate relationship with them, don't we? But I think, that IndyCar Ferrari rumor, I'm not sure how valid that is. Maybe
I seem to remember that, well, a lot of the teams now are going to want to expand their programs because of the upcoming budget cap. And I know plenty of them are definitely wanting to do World Endurance. McLaren have obviously already committed to IndyCar. I think maybe Ferrari might have because isn't their chairman American? Because isn't he related in some way with Chrysler? Who
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm positive now that there is some truth to that.
Okay.
I would love to see it. I love seeing like a lot of teams not just committing to F1. Haas, obviously, they existed in NASCAR before coming into Formula One, and I think it's Mercedes. They're now in Formula E. They were in DTM for a long time. It would honestly be really great to see more F1 teams diversifying their racing programs.
Yeah, that American you were talking about, John Elkann. I think he's the chairman of Ferrari. So yeah, no, I think you're right. Let's just park that to one side and we'll move swiftly on to. I just want to talk a little bit about safety during the Indy 500, and certainly the aero screen had its fair share of opportunities to highlight how much progress IndyCar has made in the last couple of years in terms of safety. And I mean, I remember there being a sort of argument between the halo and the aero screen in Formula One. The aero screen was obviously designed by Red Bull Technologies, and there was a very, very valid use of it. But obviously F1 chose go to the halo route, which has been brilliant. We've seen its fair share of prevention of crashes, but in this race, let's talk about Spencer Pigott's crash. I mean, it could have been so very easy for a piece of front suspension or a tire to go straight away back across into the cockpit and hit Spencer Pigot across the head. And we've seen across the season, really, we saw with, was it Rinus VeeKay and Colton Herta? I think it was at one of the oval races. We saw one of them flying over each other's cockpits and landing on top of the aero screen and practically saving one of their lives. And I forget who was who in that incident, but the aero screen has certainly proved its validity in the IndyCar. It's had its fair share of criticism. I know some people have questioned the purity of open cockpit racing, and we've seen temperatures rise in the cockpit. We've seen really high temperatures, and we've seen those little sort of hose pipes injected into the back of their helmets just to pump air into it, just to cool it down. But I mean, I think maybe one of you has more info on all the cautions we had during the race. But I think we had Alex Palou, who crashed out of the race. We also had we talked about Spencer Pigot. We had Connor Daly. We had Oliver Askew. Does anyone else remember anyone else who?
Marcus Ericsson. Yep. Then there was James Davison. When his tire just exploded when he was on fire. I can't remember anymore.
Yeah, we had a lot of brakes catching fire as well. I seem to remember in this race.
7 in total. I was surprised the cautioning came out straight away when Veach and Carpenter hit each other. Carpenter, I bet he was gutted. Oval expert. His race was over before turn 1. But yeah, I don't know what Davison's front right was all about. Just caught blaze, and then Ericsson thought Grosjean at him. That was more fire, caution too. But yeah, the only thing about the aero screen, it just takes a little bit of time to get out. But
that was what I noticed.
It's relatively safe, especially when I thought you could see it, especially when Askew hit the wall on the inside of turn 4, and when Pigot hit the pit lane barrier. So the only thing about F1, everyone will go, "Oh, Red Bull made it, so it's unfair. They've got the most technology on it." Blah 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 blah. Because that's what everyone will think about it. Especially with it's just how it works out in F1. So they go, "There's got to be a third party's got to make the source, or there'll be some sort of common census that there's they've got extra 4 temps on the car because of it's been made by Red Bull." But the aero screen, you can clearly see it does its job. It deflects any damage, any wheels And then going back to Davison quickly, when the fire happened, the wheel nut bounced off, and then if that's coming at you 160 miles an hour and that flicks up at your head, it's a bit like Felipe Massa at Hungary.
Oh,
Yeah.
When the wheel nut, you could going back and you see the pictures of when it cut his helmet open. That wouldn't happen in the modern day times, especially with the aero screen and the halo.
Yeah,
because it will deflect off. So safety, top job, all round in all sports.
yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add on that?
Not really. I mean, we have to make these changes in order to keep enjoying what we like watching, really. I think the only thing is I noticed it took a while for Davison to get out of the car. That was my concern, because it was looking really aggressive, the fire, The tyre could have popped. I mean, I don't know. You don't know the temperatures. That was my only concern. It took him a while to get out of the car, but he could have been struggling with his seatbelt or whatever. It's not necessarily linked to the screen itself. In terms of the racing, I don't think it was particularly invasive at all. I think, we've gotten used to the halo. We thought that was going to be a problem, or for the drivers, they're clearly not bothered by it. The only thing they're worried about is keeping cool, which, they've resolved. But otherwise, I mean, it's a step in the right direction. And as for Red Bull designing it, well, Red Bull are brilliant, so proud of that.
Yes, Luca. Yep.
I've got a lot to add. First of all, the idea, McLaren once designed some kind of standardized piece of technology to be applied to the whole of F1 in 2008, and which in and of itself it would seem very suspect if that conveniently failed on a rival car McLaren won. I don't know how the people would be very much overreaching themselves if they think that the aero screen designed by Red Bull would favour Red Bull. That is amazing. But onto the point about it at all, I have always, when the whole idea of cockpit protection started floating about, I was championing the aero screen. Personally, it wasn't a perfected concept the first time round. I remember Ricciardo tested it in Russia in 2016 at first. It was a very early version. It didn't look like it really worked that well. And then Vettel tested a much lesser version, and he complained about it shining the sunlight in his eyes too much. And it's not like it didn't look like they even tried with the aero screen in those versions, so they just went for the halo, which I've gotten used to it. But I just always felt like you could better this concept. You could better the aero screen, because, like Chris said, if God forbid, a Felipe Massa Hungary 2009 incident is repeated, the halo doesn't fully protect the driver. It would really have to for an aero screen.
Still room for error, isn't there, with that? Exactly.
So with the aero screen in place, I've always felt like that's how it should be. And IndyCar's concept, I mean, it's not visually pleasing, but I think that's mainly because the current cars, which have been in place since 2012, weren't really designed with an aero screen in mind. I reckon the next time that the IndyCar has a new car, it will probably be designed more with the aero screen. But also the fact is, with that particular aero screen, is that now it does actually have like a halo structure built within it. So it has the rigidity and structure advantages of the halo with none of the real visual drawbacks. And especially because with IndyCar, they really wanted to have visuals to be a lot better side by side. Because if you look at an F1 car, the halo comes up and meets the driver's eye line at the bottom, whereas with the aero screen, it's still up the top, so you can still very much see what's on the side. And so I think come next big F1 regulation change in 2022, they should definitely adopt this aero screen, because it really does have all the advantages of the halo and then some. And I'm surprised that F1 didn't go on and develop the server. I'm hoping that the halo is a temporary, I've lost the word now, solution for the issue. And that the aero screen, once it was perfected, which it seems to have done now, will come along. And as for people who are like, oh, it's not pure, it's not this and that, I mean, I will put my hands up here. I was one of those people at first. But if it means saving a life, so be it. My only concern is, if a car is upside down, there is supposed to be a bit of a gap between the that overhead hoop,
Mm.
and where the car will come to a rest on the front, so that the driver can just undo their seatbelts and be able to crawl out. And I haven't seen that in practice yet, but I'm sure they're all professionals at Dallara. I'm sure they've already proven that to be the case. I just haven't seen it in action yet, and hopefully we never will have to. You don't ever want to like see that in practice if it means a driver is having to actually escape. I assume they have. So yeah. IndyCar Aero Screen, great thing. F1 should adopt it.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Absolutely. We're getting on to our final points now. I've got 2 more points to give to you guys before we round off today's Pitcast. One of them being, is Takuma Sato underrated? And I just want to put that out there, really, because I don't really think our current F1 generation really appreciates maybe the talent that he presents. And if we even look back to some of his previous performances, especially at BAR in 2004, I mean, he got a podium at the Indianapolis Grand Prix back in 2004, and then he had a magnificent run to the end of that season where I think it was he got about maybe 5 out of 6 top 6 finishes near the end of the season, and he really outperformed that BAR to what it was. And what do we think? Do we think Takuma Sato is underrated?
Who wants to take that first?
Yeah.
You think he's underrated?
Oh, no. I thought you said. I thought you wanted to take it first. Sorry.
No, I feel like I'm talking so much. I want everyone to get them.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. I don't really have an opinion, to be honest. I think he's like Kamui Kobayashi, I guess. Inspirational to Japanese fans and young aspiring Japanese drivers. But I don't really. I guess so. Yeah. I mean, he's maybe because I don't have an opinion that would maybe confirm the fact that he's underrated. I'm not too sure. He's just not. When he won the first IndyCar, I was extremely surprised, to be honest. The Indy 500, sorry. But other than that, I haven't really followed his career. But maybe it shows I'm a crap fan. I don't know.
No, you're not.
I mean,
but yeah, I haven't really. I don't know. Has anybody else got any thoughts? Because I'm not too sure, really.
He's not really a standout driver as such. He had that good end of the season in 2004 with the podium in US, so you could maybe see that US was the way to go. But then again, the following season, he did not start. So, and then, like I said previously in the podcast, in 2007 in the Super Aguri, he did Alonso. So it was. There's the time starting.
Maybe he should be on the top 10 AWS greatest drivers list. So, maybe we'll see that.
So then you could see the things happen in freeze. The Illuminati was setting in. Yeah. He done Alonso in Canada. Then he done Alonso in 2017, and he done Alonso again in 2020. There's your 3 things. But he doesn't really stand out. He had a good little run with Button. But he's just he gets the job done. He's a bit like, say, Coulthard, for example. He just gets the job done. He's not he's just like the gentleman driver.
Yeah, Luca. Yep.
I think he gets like I was mentioning earlier with his very questionable manoeuvres. I reckon he gets overshadowed a bit by his very over-aggressive driving. But we do need that in a way, even if it is a bit over the line sometimes. I think Takuma Sato, he got a very high profile as a result of being one of the very few Japanese drivers to be on a podium in F1. I think I can count on one hand the amount of podiums a Japanese driver has had. I think Aguri Suzuki, who became his team boss in like the 1990 Japanese Grand Prix, Sato at Indy 04, and then Kobayashi at Suzuka in 2012. Japan as a country, the fact that we can, like, you could say Italy by 1952 had 75% of all F1 World Championships, and they haven't won one since. Japan hasn't had one, and yet Japan is probably the sort of the outlier in Asian culture that has this car culture within their country. And they've never been successful in F1. Kamui Kobayashi was, for me, that one driver who definitely should have had a better bite of the cherry. He obviously had a 2 race run at the end of 2009 with Toyota. then went 2010 to 2012 with Sauber. And then for some reason, because he was that desperate to get back to F1, he took a free drive of Caterham, even after being offered a very high salary by Ferrari to be their world endurance and race driver and F1 test driver.
Okay.
Japan needs a hero, and Sato currently is that example now for Japan. And I'm hoping that, we've got the likes of Yuki Tsunoda in F2 right now, who's really impressive, and I think he might be in an AlphaTauri next year. And then you've got Juju Noda, who is a 14-year-old girl who might not only be one of the first Japanese drivers to be successful, one of the first women. Japan needs a hero, and Sato is, whilst he's obviously not going to be going back to F1 anytime soon, he's definitely proven that the Japanese need to be taken seriously in motorsport.
Yeah, and I think you put that really well, and I think I'll only just add to that in saying that Takuma Sato was stranded in America, and he couldn't go back and fly and see his family throughout the entire COVID situation. So that must have been a struggle and just the mere story of that, and being able to go and say that a Japanese driver powered by a Japanese engine manufacturer won the Indy 500 the same year the Olympics was removed, in Japan. So I think you're right. Japan needs Takuma Sato, and I think maybe even Sato is going to be made a torchbearer for the Olympics when it comes back around. So that's how high they regard him as a sportsman, as a celebrity, and good on him. Really, I wish him all the best. And so that brings us to our final point on the Pitcast, and that is really, I want to know your star drivers. Really, who impressed you most and why? If you have any different ideas from anyone we've discussed, or if you want to just say the ones we've discussed, that's okay. But I'm just going to start with mine really quickly, and I just want to say a little bit about Jack Harvey. Now, he's had a really very decent last 3 races. He's finished in the top 10 in all of those, and he's just sort of quietly gone about his business, really, and he nailed all of the restarts, and he put himself in a solid top 10 position, and he nailed all the pit stops, and on every restart, I think he made up places on most restarts. So he did such a good job, really, and he's someone who hasn't really performed over the past few years. I think that's fair to say in IndyCar, and he's just on a run of form, and I think he should be commended, really, for what he did. But if anyone else has a star driver, go ahead.
I'd like to take this one. First of all, Adam, I was expecting you to say Rinus VeeKay. I will go on about him, but I do actually, because Jack Harvey, I had the fortune of meeting him just before he went to America. I was gutted because I felt like he could have made it to F1. He was part of Racing Steps Foundation, which funded the careers of many, many top-line drivers: Oliver Rowland, Oliver Turvey, James Collado. So many drivers have got an opportunity thanks to Racing Steps, and unfortunately, none of them have ever made it to F1. But I think IndyCar is probably the next best thing, and I think Harvey really got the short end of the stick because he went into Indy Lights in the first year, just missed out on the championship, and as you know, with Indy Lights, they do get money. They do give money to the champion at the end of the season. And so he was really he was like going into the second season, okay, if I don't win this, I'm screwed. And then he lost it. And so he was second 2 years in a row, and he's been stuck doing part-time racing ever since. This was his first season doing full-time racing, and he's really proven it. I think the last 2 years at the Indy Grand Prix, he was very high up on the grid, second or third, both times. And he's formidable. But I will say, since you had the fortune of interviewing him, Rinus VeeKay, or Rinus van Kalmthout, I can't even say it. It's probably a good thing he said VeeKay. I was amazed by the fact that he stuck it in 4th, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that is incredible. And I remember, because I asked you to send a question in to him regarding his involvement with the Boss GP series, which covers a lot of gentleman drivers, a very unorthodox route. And I think VeeKay he's definitely proven that he belongs there, and maybe he is going to be like the Max Verstappen of IndyCar. So I'm giving it to him personally. He did get very unlucky. I think he had some kind of issue, a slow down penalty, I think, at some point as well. Yeah. And he went a lap down. If it had not been for that, I think he could have been on the podium. So that's my star driver, Rinus VeeKay.
Fantastic. Yeah. Anyone else?
Chris?
I'll go with I would say shout out to Castro Neves. Most places made up from 28th to 11th, but I was Harvey top Brit, but no, I'll go with O'Ward because top rookie in 6th, and just really top rookie really. Got together from 15th to 6th place. I could say Ferrucci. There we are. But no, O'Ward, top rookie. It's hard to say, oh, he's only 3 seconds behind the leader, but he finished behind caution. You don't know. You don't know how far he could have been behind the leader if cautions weren't in consideration. But he had done a solid drive. Wasn't the same strategy as everyone else. Didn't do any alternative strategies and details like that throughout the race. All on five pit stops. So I'll give it to O'Ward.
Brilliant. And finally with Ashleigh.
I agree with Chris, actually. I think Pato did really well, but I think as well, he wasn't necessarily an outstanding driver or anything, but Colton Herta stayed exactly, in the top 10. And, with everything that happened, to be able to stay, every time you check the board when it goes round and, you can see all the listings, it's like, yep, Colton's still there, he's still there, and I feel like if things had been different, he might have been able to work his way up, but I don't know if, there was something with the car that just wasn't working for him to work his way up. But I think he's definitely, I think when he first started, I was like, okay, he's one to watch. So I feel like he's got something, maybe not, obviously not this time, but in the next couple of years, I would like to see him, but to win one. But yeah, him and definitely Pato Ward did really well, I think.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us today with the Pitcast for the Indy 500. That brings it to a close. Thank you for joining me, and thank all of you for listening. And I'm just going to ask all of you to perhaps, if you want, to publicly say what your Twitter handle is, where our fans can find you guys. If any of you wanted to do that, now's your opportunity.
I'll go first. If you want to find me on Twitter, it is redluca56.
Lovely.
Anyone else?
Yeah, my Twitter handle is @love_Lee and 2 kisses at the end.
And I'm at C_Lordy91.
Lovely, brilliant. And as we draw that to a close, we have a brilliant weekend of motorsport upcoming. We've got the Spa Grand Prix, the Belgium Grand Prix coming up, and we've also got another IndyCar doubleheader at I'm right in thinking it's somewhere in Illinois, Gateway, we have coming up. So we've got an outstanding weekend of motorsport, which you're all going to be able to find on the Pit Crew online.
Which will probably have already happened by the time this episode comes out.
That's very true. So you might be able to find our articles on those subjects if you just go on our website. But thank you all very much for listening, and we will see you on track.